Hi, it's Andy.
Hi, it's Dave.
Hi, it's Kirk.
Welcome to the A.D.K channel, and today we're doing a album review for the band Jesus Piece and the album So Unknown. I'm going to throw this over to Kirk to go in a bit more detail about the band and details and give your thoughts on the album first, as you are our resident metal extraordinaire expert. Over to you.
Yeah, so this is the sophomore effort from the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania hardcore quintet Jesus Piece. It's their debut on a major, in this case, Century Media. The debut album was 2018, so obviously the pandemic has interrupted the creativity of this band, and then they've come back really all guns blazing on this record. To me, I would say the first half of this record is just as much mathcore as it is metallic hardcore. And then the second half, strangely enough, seems to settle almost into like an aggressive groove metal style, where they're relying too much just on those, open string chugging riffs. And they seem to stop playing the off-kilter drum patterns as well in the second half. So for me, when I heard the first two songs, In Constraints and Fear of Failure, I was just thinking, wow, this is as good as Dillinger Escape Plan's Ire Works from 2007. Fantastic, bludgeoning audio assault. Stop start, so many different modulations, you just can't get your head around it. I mean, the track number one is only 2 minutes and 19 songs, and there must be about 17 different parts in this, each one more brutal than the last. Fear of Failure, excellent. I would say this is the standout song because it actually has a clear death metal influence, and I'm disappointed that they don't include that in some of the later songs, because the guitar riffing on this from David Updike and John DeStefano is highly technical, really inventive. There's some good pedal effects in there as well. The drummer is just accenting everything. That's to me where the mathcore element comes in. Excellent vocal performance from Aaron Hurd, who's the front man. We've also reacted to one of their videos, didn't we? And we were saying, what a performance, visceral, aggressive, but also there was an element of paranoia to it as well, which came through in the story for the video. So I think the other song that stands out for me is track number 5, Silver Lining, which I believe was a lead single leading up to this album as well. I actually heard some Killing Joke melody in there, but strangely enough, I also heard like a Korn Life is Peachy vibe. I think there were elements of new metal coming into this, and you could compare them to the Philadelphia or Pennsylvania natives like Code Orange, that band Vane FM. They mix mathcore with new metal. And there's also a Century Media band called Orthodox who released a hardcore album last year, which was interesting. And even that had some new metal elements. So, as you know, I'm not the biggest fan of new metal, but I don't mind it when you're mixing it with mathcore and hardcore. It actually sounds quite interesting. The disappointing thing with this, I do think near the end, it's almost as if they'd extinguished my energy as a listener. By the time I get to track number 7 and I'm just hearing these chugging riffs all the time, and it's slowing down and it's not as complex. Are they running out of ideas? Have they done that classic thing where they put the best 5 tracks at the beginning of the album? It ends really good with track number 10, The Bond. That's got more of an industrial pattern to it at the beginning, and then they slow things down in preparation for another blast of chugging guitars. I think that works really well. The song Profane, excellent groove metal. It's almost got like a Lamb of God feel to it. I do think Aaron Hurd's vocals are really strong on this. They're so aggressive. There's so much might behind them. But again, I use that word paranoia as well. Not quite hysteria, paranoia. So yeah, technical album. The first half is supreme. The second half becomes a bit predictable. I'm slightly disappointed. I was expecting this to be the Scream Blast Repeat album of the week. And when I heard the first 2 tracks, I thought, okay, this is already in the bag. It's an 8 or a 9 out of 10. When I come to the end of it, I was thinking this is a solid 7 out of 10. It could have been better. Maybe my expectation levels were too high.
Okay. Andy, what do you reckon?
Can I just first of all say a big thank you to the record labels and the PR companies who send us these advanced copies. I feel very privileged to be able to listen to these before they're released and get the chance to review them, because it's opened my eyes to some great new music. So thank you to those companies involved. Echoing a lot of what Kirk said, to be honest, regarding this album. I'm not a sort of huge hardcore fan, be it the modern day stuff, which this clearly falls into, all the sort of classic old school stuff. But I really liked it. I mean, from the opening moment of the first song, it's so ferocious. It's straight into the vocals. It's brutal. The first few tracks again reminded me very much of one of my favourite bands. Again, they're classed as hardcore. UK's Guilt Trip, who produce some some really good material. I absolutely love them. And there's some some elements which I guess is classic modern hardcore. Certainly Guilt Trip use these. The single guitar with the other instruments sort of punching in as the riff starts. Pinch harmonics. Love all that. Vocals were really good. You said about sort of mathcore at the beginning, sort of more metal moments at the second half of the album. I agree. There's some. That's pretty much how I interpreted it. Certainly more sort of metal comes in the second half, particularly on the song Tunnel Vision. Standout track for me is one you didn't mention. In fact, is Stolen Life. It's got a really good breakdown. That was my favourite. Yeah, a good album. Really good example of sort of modern hardcore, metallic hardcore.
Okay. So for me, this isn't a sort of music as a general whole that I would listen to. But I found what I always find really interesting when we do get an album like this is our favourite tracks are always different. It's occasionally you two will get your favourites will be like the first two tracks and mine will be the last two tracks, and we'll always say that's the complete opposite. And then sometimes it's like today where we'll all pick out our own different favourites, and I think that's a really good sign from a band where it's not completely polarising, where it rules out it doesn't give any accessibility to other fans of different styles. So for me, the first two songs on the album really weren't interested in at all. I listened to it and I was like, no, I'm not into this at all. I wrote in, like, the first thing I wrote about In Constraints was punches in so hard there is no subtlety at all about this.
Yeah, it's just chaos.
It was just like, whoa! I'm like, what the freaking hell is this? But that put me off because I don't like that sort of thing. But I understood why they went for it. Fear of Failure, again, very punchy, but just felt like it's an aggressive track. But I was great. So like Tunnel Vision, when that came in, I was going, almost late 90s porn vibes coming in here.
Yeah.
Really liked that. FTBS, Suicidal Tendencies, but only a bit heavier, was another kind of vibe I got from them. Silver Lining was just pure death, but mixed with some really groovy groove patterns, very catchy, which, even though that's, for me, was like a pure death track, I actually liked the groove element that they had in there as well. Again, Profane, pretty much for I put it down as deathcore, but very accessible deathcore, almost Pantera-ish was another kind of vibe I got from that. And the other one, Stolen Life, was my favourite track off the album. Almost like Crowbar meets Obituary was the best way I could define that. It had the kind of Crowbar, it had like the Crowbar riffs with the Obituary vocals, and it worked really, really well. And I loved, The Bond was another great track as well. Every time it went into that real intense tracks, I just felt it felt too generic for me. I was just like, seen it, heard it. There wasn't enough of any interest. It could have been any other band of that genre. But when they threw in like some of these kind of groove elements, or when they threw in like these corn elements with this nice guitar textures, I was like, that's great. You're still doing that heavy aggressive elements, but you're throwing something else in to keep other listeners interested. So in summary, I wrote lots of groove metal riffs, punchy heavy patterns, guttural vocals, whilst throwing in some clever little guitar tricks that you wouldn't expect from a band in this genre.
I think that's a good analysis, that, Dave. I mean, we differ on this, don't we, though? Because I think I'm at my least interested when they're playing that groove metal stuff. It's like they rely too much on that beat down hardcore vibe in the second half of this album. If they could have kept up the chaos and fundamental like pandemonium of those first two tracks and interspersed them with a few interlude tracks, Dillinger Escape Plan were kings of this. You wouldn't just get 9 songs that take your head off. You'd have 6 of them that do that, and then the other 3 would just be these weird electronic jazz hybrid songs. But it really served the album. They could have done with a couple in here. I definitely heard a few Machine Head riffs in there because they were using the natural harmonics, weren't they? Rather than pinch harmonics. I think the only thing that disappoints me is this. I expected it to be an absolute classic. And especially when I heard those first 2 songs, like, this is just made for me. And I didn't end, the listening experience didn't end like that for me. It was like, this is good, top quality, brutal hardcore, but I don't think they've achieved the promise or the potential on this album, but no doubt will probably do on the next album.
I just had a couple more points.
Yeah.
Vocals were excellent. There was a good, good variety in the styles that were delivered. I don't know if there's, somebody jumping on the backing vocals or whether it's the main man altering his style, but I thought that was really good. And we've talked about this. This is sort of something that I often raise. Band names. It's not one that drags you in, is it?
No.
No.
You know what I mean? I've never listened to Hunt in a million years just by the name. I don't really know what it means. It just doesn't grab me as a band name. I know that is quite important and sort of less so for other people, but to me that is it's like the first impression.
Yeah.
The band name, if you see it on a magazine cover or in a list of reviews or ones that we could possibly go through, it wouldn't be one that jumped out and thought, oh yes, I want to check this album out. So just that point from me.
Yeah. Okay, before we go to our scoring, I'm going to answer one thing that Kirk said, where you were saying about you don't think they achieved what they could have. I guess in my head, I'm also thinking, well, depending on what they were trying to achieve. So did they achieve the pure intensity aggression that maybe you were expecting from a band like this? Probably not. But if they were trying to give you something that maybe some crossover fans would get into, then they've definitely achieved that. Because I know that if this had been that album that you were expecting, like that Pure Aggression one, this would have been a trade it definitely for me.
Yeah, you'd have lost interest within 3 songs. You wouldn't.
It would have been. That would have been. Yeah, it'd be great for that genre and that market people, but it would not have an appeal for outside of that. Whereas I think here, what they've done is they've got some songs that really target for one market, but then they've given some little gateway songs that will allow people that are into the more groove metal stuff to come over to them. That maybe would never have done that if they hadn't done this. So I think it's quite a clever way of doing it, and I reckon the next album will be even more of that. I think there's going to be a wider variety, or they'll see what people's feedback is on this, and they might go to pure extreme metal on the next one.
They're definitely on the up, this band, aren't they? They're one to watch out for. And
yeah, definitely.
I was psyched for this. I was really pumped up, and I enjoyed it. It just wasn't quite the supreme mathcore, hardcore type brutal album that I wanted. It was heavy. Don't get me wrong. This is heavy with a capital H, isn't it? Yeah, enjoyable. I just think that it could be even better, this record.
Weirdly, for me, Gates of Horn, their lead single, wasn't even the best track on the album. I thought it was quite generic as a track when I listened to the rest of the album, but
yeah,
I liked it when it came out. But when I listened to it as a concept,
it didn't stand out. And the other thing as well, I know we mention in every review, but clearly Meshuggah are the most influential band in modern metal. It's like the riffs, they're like a hardcore version of Meshuggah on that song, with a bit of that Dillinger Escape Plan, Norma Jean chaos in the Car Bomb even. But okay, I'll definitely give it another listen, put it that way.
Right, let's do some scoring. We can talk about this forever otherwise. Right, let's get it. As there's 4 categories, we will score it out. It's either a bid it, a trade it, a stream it, or a buy it. Andy, over to you.
I'll certainly give this a listen, and in a more sort of relaxed environment where I haven't got to sort of analyse it so much. But yeah, definitely a stream it for me.
Okay, and as my rules are always very simple, I always star against all the song names, and if more than 50% of the songs I've got a star against them because I liked them, it becomes a stream it, and there was more than 50% on the album that I liked, so it's a stream it from me.
Yeah, I'm disappointed that I can't say it's a buy it. Didn't just quite reach where I wanted it to be. Definite stream it though. Go out and listen to this album. This is, this is highly enjoyable.
Okay, there we go. Jesus Peace and So Unknown gets a stream it from the ADK channel. Now, if you like this video, please do like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on another video sometime very soon. Take care.